My ex-boyfriend is acting strange. He posted a picture of his abs online, and I coldly scrolled past without liking it. Before long, he slid into my DMs. Didn't you even think to give a like after seeing my abs? I retorted. Didn't see it? Stop being so full of yourself. Oh, but I set it to only be visible to you. The backend shows it's been viewed over 300 times, with 100% completion rate. Damn. That Friday night, I was lying in my dorm bed scrolling through short videos. I have to say, big data really knows me. As midnight approached, I was either seeing ghosts or legs, or various handsome guys. It made me feel a bit restless. Just as I was getting excited, the platform suddenly pushed a local video to me. In the video, a handsome guy was filming himself, with his phone covering his face, making it hard to see his features. But he was wearing gray sweatpants. He must have just gotten out of the shower. His hair was still a bit wet. I watched as a suggestive droplet slid down into his abs. Slurp. I couldn't take my eyes off it. No wonder people say men in gray sweatpants are like women in black stockings. The visual effect is simply stunning. Wiping my drool, I was about to follow this handsome guy, but then I looked at his name and froze. It felt like a surreal mix of Lin Dayu riding a motorcycle. What the hell? How could it be my unfortunate ex-boyfriend, Ed Fred? He used to hate it when I watched suggestive stuff, but now he's doing it himself. What a double standard. I was about to report him for being shameless, but my hand hesitated strangely. TSK. Handsome guys are common, and guys with 8-pack abs are also not rare, but someone as handsome as my ex-boyfriend with a great body is quite rare. Back then, I accidentally got completely mesmerized by Ed Fred, and started cautiously pursuing him, boldly testing the waters. Unexpectedly, Ed Fred agreed to date me not long after. From then on, we walked a shameful path. It was truly sweet. The hotel outside our college city even gave us a special membership card, but our personalities were both stubborn. He was laid back with a bad temper, and I was carefree with a stubborn streak. We always ended up arguing over trivial matters, although we eventually made up. Over time, it did hurt our feelings a bit. Last week, we had a fight over something small again, and I directly brought up breaking up. He stared at me for a while, then turned and walked away. I stayed cold and didn't try to keep him, but within 3 minutes of breaking up, the person involved expressed regret, a lot of regret, but I didn't dare approach him, just cried silently. Now seeing his abs made me drool. I just couldn't help watching the video over and over. My phone was getting too hot to touch. To avoid him noticing I was spying, I purposely didn't like it, feeling proud yet on thin ice. But just as I was about to watch it again, I received a message from Ed Fred on Weshit. Didn't you even think to give a like after seeing my abs? I bolted upright in bed. What a shock. How did he know I watched it? Flustered but still proud, I replied, didn't see it? Stop being so full of yourself. What level are you at to think I'd be interested? I saw Ed Fred reply leisurely, is that so? But I set this video to be visible only to you, meaning no one else can see it, and oddly enough, the backend shows it's been viewed over 300 times, with 100% completion rate. Bridget Judson. Why do you think that is? I held my phone, my face turning all shades of red and green. I felt my toes working hard, as if I were digging out a luxurious version of the royal palace. I messed up. I actually fell into this dog's trap. I hate him. But Bridget Judson, a woman like a fierce hawk, would never easily admit defeat, even if the dead are gone. The mouth is still tough. Fine, I did watch it, mainly because watching your video earns me coins. I watched it a few times and earned $3. Next time, make it longer so I can earn more coins. Ed Fred sent me a deathly question mark. Even through the screen, I could imagine his cold smirk, clenched fists, and gritted teeth. Bridget Judson, am I really only worth $3 to you? Look, he's getting anxious. He's getting anxious. I immediately turned the tables. What did you expect? But don't be sad. Work harder and you might earn enough to buy a cup of lemonade from Shui Wang's. Ed Fred must have been furious. He didn't reply anymore. Feeling pleased, I watched his abs video another 200 times. I missed that touch and warmth. I really missed him. Honestly, I understood his intention of setting it to be visible only to me. I'm not that naive and sweet. He just wanted an excuse to get back together, so I didn't keep my distance either. The next day, after class, I went to the basketball court to find him. I was prepared to give him an excuse to reconcile, hoping he wouldn't be too stubborn. As expected, Ed Fred was playing ball with his friends at that hour. His energetic and handsome appearance attracted a bunch of girls, all crowding around him. I found a spot and lazily watched him. I watched him shoot accurately, wipe his sweat, and then walk to the sidelines to get water from a pretty girl. Maybe the court was a bit noisy, but they were leaning in close while talking. From my angle, it looked somewhat intimate. A handsome guy with a pretty girl. A beautiful scene. I suddenly crushed the lemon water bottle in my hand. It startled the passerby nearby. I politely apologized and turned to throw the broken bottle in the trash. Without looking back, I left. When a guy cries, people notice. When a girl cries, who cares? This time, my sadness was truly only visible to me. I painfully blacklisted all of Ed Fred's contacts, including online ones. However, I still secretly saved the abs video I had played over and over. I planned to use it as a mental snack during quiet nights to relieve my loneliness. I wiped my tears, trying to force myself to sleep and stop thinking about that dog of a man. But then, I couldn't sleep at all. When I closed my eyes, he was all I could think about. Just as I was lost in thought, a strange call came in. Noticing my roommate was still awake, I answered. Bridget Judson, you have to go comfort Ed Fred. Done. Ed Fred's roommate yelled urgently. What does that have to do with me? Call me when he's eating. Bye. Don't. He's drunk and crying like a baby by the street lamp downstairs, saying you don't want him anymore, refusing to go back to the dorm. It's not too late yet. Bridget Judson, can you go persuade him? Otherwise, it'll be embarrassing. He's our university's face. I turned over in bed. Not going. Let him find other girls to comfort him. It has nothing to do with me. Dunn tried to explain something, but I think the phone was snatched away. Ed Fred's voice came through the earpiece. He sounded a bit tipsy, his voice hoarse and slurred. Bridget Judson, I want to hug you. I teased. Let the girl who brought you water today hug you. I want to kiss you. I shot back. Let that girl who brought you water kiss you. If she's not around, just hit your own mouth with your shoe to stop your cravings. There was a moment of silence on the other end, as if he understood something. Oh, so you came looking for me. Why didn't you come bring me water then? I've been waiting for you, and you blacklisted me? Does that mean you really don't want me anymore? Honestly, when Ed Fred spoke to me so pitifully, it felt a bit like he was whining. It made me soft-hearted. I couldn't help but give in. You had girls bringing you water today, didn't you? I saw it all during the game. During the game, the drunk guy recalled and replied seriously. Since you stopped bringing me water this week, I had to ask my friends to chip in to buy a case of water. That girl was sent by Dunn to bring water. Otherwise, some kid would keep stealing our water. Nearby, Dunn yelled in agreement. Exactly, Bridget Judson. Martha Dearser is my little sister. Don't misunderstand. Although Ed Fred can be irritating, he doesn't team up with his roommate to lie to me. I rubbed my nose, realizing I might have misunderstood. All right, go back to the dorm. Don't act crazy late at night. Can I come off the blacklist now? Reluctantly, yes. Can we make up now? I'll have to think about that. Though I said that, I couldn't hide my smile. He was being so humble. I didn't want to be too proud, but I still needed to clarify our issues. Otherwise, we'd end up Cold War-ing and breaking up again in a few days. This kind of back and forth cycle can be exhausting. If I end up completely drained, that would really be the end. Worried about hurting his pride, I decided to phrase it gently. It mainly depends on your performance. You know what I mean. I heard his breath hitch on the other end. Okay, come downstairs now. I'll be right there. Why go downstairs? I asked, confused. To stay up late together. I want to show you how well I can perform. That's not the kind of performance I meant. I felt my face heat up. In the end, I still went downstairs. I had no choice. I was a big foodie. Wait. I only wanted to check on Ed Fred to see if he was okay after drinking too much. I'm just kind-hearted and beautiful. After telling my roommates that I wouldn't need them to keep the door open tonight, I was instantly met with teasing glances. I knew you two would definitely get back together within a week. Damn it, when will I get such a sweet love? I smiled. Well, we haven't completely made up yet. One of my roommates seemed to remember something, and hesitantly told me, Bridget Judson. I keep seeing Ed Fred with a junior girl lately. She's quite pretty, a bit like you. I nodded, realizing she was talking about that Martha Dearser. Ed Fred has always kept a good distance from other girls, refusing to overstep boundaries. So, I didn't mind. My roommate didn't elaborate further. I hurriedly packed my things and rushed downstairs, only to find Ed Fred was already there. He stood lazily, and when he saw me, his eyes lit up. He immediately came over wanting hugs and kisses. I quickly pinched his mouth shut with 2 fingers, looking serious. Shut up. What are you doing? I'm a decent person. Ed Fred grumbled. Why can't I kiss you? We're not back together. What does that count as? He sneered. Well, Bridget Judson, since you don't want me to kiss you, could you please stop touching my abs? Cough, cough. Sorry, I'm just used to it. Don't worry. I promise I won't act mischievously before we get back together. I came today because I was worried you might drink too much and choke on it at midnight. Just think of me as a beautiful person with a good heart, and be secretly pleased. I quickly retracted my hand, firmly denying. Oh, please, the moment I see you, I can't help but want to touch. Really? I don't believe it. Believe it or not, let's go. I blushed and turned away, not noticing the sly smile forming at the corners of Ed Fred's mouth, as if he was plotting something. On the way to the hotel, Ed Fred was unusually proper, even a bit cold. Normally, when we were together, the atmosphere was so ambiguous that you could practically take a pregnancy test and get 2 lines. His attitude today made me feel somewhat uncomfortable, but since I had already said what I did, I held it in. Once we got to the hotel room, while I was rummaging through my bag, I seriously reminded him, go take a shower to wash off the alcohol smell, but don't take too long, otherwise, you'll end up with a headache. I know, Ed Fred replied, and then I heard some rustling noises. I suspiciously looked up and nearly had a nosebleed because this guy was undressing right in front of me. The view was stunning. I gulped nervously. What are you doing? He casually replied, taking off my clothes to shower. Want to join? Get lost. Stop being such a pervert. If you don't wash, I'm leaving. Seeing that I was genuinely upset, Ed Fred turned and went to the bathroom. Damn it, I had to admit that the hotel's decor was a bit shameless, with frosted glass walls in the bathroom. Once Ed Fred went in, the obscured view was even more enticing than a clear one, making it hard for me to look away. With his broad shoulders, narrow waist, and long legs, just a casual toss of his hair made my nose heat up. I felt a sudden rush. I touched my nose. It was all blood. When Ed Fred came out with just his upper body exposed, my nosebleed that I had just managed to stop almost started again. I stammered, put on a shirt. Don't be so flashy. He glanced at me. What's wrong? You know I sleep like this, right? I did know, and I loved it. Every time I saw him like this, I wanted to jump him, but I had to hold back. I averted my gaze with great effort. Fine, sleep however you want. Just remember to turn off the lights. If you feel unwell at night, call for me. Other than that, pretend I'm dead. After saying that, I buried my face in the blanket, hiding my lustful expression from him. Ed Fred didn't say much and simply turned off the lights. Then the mattress next to me sank slightly. I instinctively wanted to roll into his arms, like those previous nights, but forcefully stopped myself. I had to endure. We weren't back together yet. Since I remained silent, Ed Fred didn't say anything either, but the mingled scent of alcohol and hotel shampoo from his body kept assaulting my nose, making it impossible for me to sleep, and my mind was filled with unhealthy thoughts. Let me clarify, the indecent thoughts in my head have nothing to do with me personally. I respect my mind's ideas and choices. I'm still that pure girl, who sees lust as something disgusting. So, I figured I could sneak a touch to satisfy my cravings without him minding. Once Ed Fred's breathing became steady, indicating he was asleep, I reached over. First, I poked him gently. Ed Fred, are you asleep? He didn't respond, I poked again, a bit more firmly. Ed Fred. He still didn't answer but started to snore softly. Heh. When did he pick up this annoying habit of snoring? But at that moment, I didn't have time to think much. Realizing he was fast asleep, gave me the courage to proceed. The feeling of reuniting after a long time really made my head spin. I wanted to play hide and seek in his abs. I wanted to slide down his nose. After touching, I couldn't resist leaning in to kiss him, but his head was turned, making it difficult for me to reach. I thought about pushing his head, but worried I might wake him. Just as I decided to give up, Ed Fred mumbled and moved his head slightly, exposing his face perfectly. It felt like a dream come true. Seizing the opportunity, I quickly planted a kiss on him, then couldn't resist, and kissed him again. Only then did I quietly snuggle into his arms and close my eyes. I secretly decided I would wake up 5 minutes earlier than Ed Fred in the morning, so he wouldn't find out. I was happily planning this when I vaguely heard a light chuckle. Then I felt a couple of kisses on my face, and I was pulled even closer. The next morning, I was woken up by my phone ringing. I irritably opened my eyes, and turned to bury my face in the person next to me, trying to block out the noise with his chest. Shut up. At that moment, someone picked up my phone, their voice still thick with sleep. Not buying a house, not buying a car, not signing up for packages, not taking extra classes. If you keep advertising, I'll scatter your ashes. The room went quiet. Satisfied, I prepared to drift back to sleep, but the next second, I realized something. Wait. The person next to me is. I opened my eyes wide in panic. There I was, clinging tightly to my ex-boyfriend, my legs awkwardly draped over his waist. How shameless. I stiffly lifted my neck, and found Ed Fred looking at me with a smirk. Bridget Judson, what's going on here? I quickly distanced myself from him, defending myself with little confidence. I was just hugging you. Don't think too much. Really? Ed Fred lazily yawned. By the way, why are my lips a bit swollen? Did you steal a kiss from me last night? That's just a mosquito bite. Ed Fred's gaze landed on my lips. So your lips are also bitten by a mosquito? Sorry, I'm just having some heat issues. Didn't you see I had a nosebleed last night? I said stubbornly, afraid he'd ask more questions. I hurriedly jumped out of bed and started getting dressed. I have an early class. I'll be going now. Ed Fred called after me, looking somewhat downcast. Bridget Judson, were you serious about what you said yesterday about getting back together? Of course, I'm serious. Ed Fred stared at me intently, his eyes full of distrust and sadness, as if I didn't give a good enough answer, I would completely lose him. This made me feel somewhat guilty and pained. After a long internal struggle, I decided to tell the truth. Ed Fred, I didn't want to break up with you, but after thinking it through, I believe it's better to clarify things directly. Otherwise, it wouldn't be fair to you. Actually, your mom came to see me just the day before we broke up. As soon as I said this, Ed Fred's expression changed. The reason for our breakup, aside from the trivial matters, was that his mom had contacted me. I had always known he came from a wealthy family, but I didn't expect it to be that affluent. Looking at my cheap t-shirt compared to the expensive purple jade bracelet his mom wore made me realize how different our worlds were. During that conversation, his mom was very kind, saying she just wanted to see what kind of girlfriend Ed Fred had found, but her words hinted at a stark reality. I couldn't provide him with any support. Love can't be eaten, but money can. Moreover, after graduation, Ed Fred would likely get engaged to a girl from a similar background. That enormous gap was suffocating. People have their joys and sorrows. Cattle and horses are just for embellishing life. I was destined to be the successor of the cattle and horses, while he was undoubtedly the successor of a big boss. I wanted to have a proper conversation with Ed Fred, but found him playing basketball, vigorous and carefree. He truly didn't match me at all. This was also the reason people didn't understand why he dated me in the first place. They thought he didn't really like me, just found my vase-like appearance and silly personality amusing, and wanted to play around. I thought so too. After all, Ed Fred never explained why he liked me. He simply agreed after I chased him for 2 days. Once we were together, it was all kisses, hugs, and passionate moments, or heading to the hotel. In short, it was just about sex, not pure love, but disturbingly carnal. I always pretended not to know, maintaining a facade of calm, until his mom's visit gave me a heavy slap across the face, waking me up and making me feel small. It made me realize that Fred might have just wanted to play with me. If our ending was destined to be embarrassing, it would be better to end it early. So, I used a trivial matter to break up with him. It was both painful and helpless. After Fred learned that his mom had visited me, he returned home that day with a cold expression. I was terrified. What if he confronted her, and she thought I was trying to stir up trouble between them? The mother-son relationship would be ruined before it even began. Thinking of that made me even more anxious. I unblocked Fred from my blacklist, wanting to advise him to have a good talk with his mom. He agreed, but I still couldn't eat or sleep well. On the third day, to welcome the new members, the astronomy club president organized a camping trip. I reluctantly went for the credits. Fred was one of them, but he probably wouldn't show up today. I missed him so much. Feeling down, I got on the bus and unexpectedly spotted a familiar figure sitting in the back row. Probably sensing my shocked gaze, Fred lifted his eyelids and looked at me lazily. He looked like a charming fox. I hurried over, eagerly asking, "Why are you here? I thought you weren't coming today. Didn't you want me to perform? If I don't stick close to you, how can I show my worth?" I paused. "I meant about you coming home, this time." Fred toyed with my hand resting on his leg and chuckled softly. "What are you nervous about?" "I just talked to my mom about us, and tried to clear up some of her concerns." "What concerns?" Fred leaned in and explained softly. "You've probably noticed that my relationship with my mom isn't very close, right?" Yeah, that was true. Fred usually just had brief phone calls and video chats with her. They would exchange a few words and hang up. Unlike my conversations with my parents, even though they're busy with work, we could chat about everything from international affairs to school gossip, and we enjoyed it. Fred had mentioned several times that he envied the atmosphere in my family. He sighed. "Honestly, my mom is quite pitiful. She married my dad through an arranged marriage. My dad is a jerk. He used to cheat on her all the time when I was little. There were enough mistresses to form a battalion. My mom tolerated it because the family's partnership was important. Things only got worse when my dad started hitting on the cleaning lady at his company, and wanted to divorce my mom for her. Anyone who isn't an idiot could see that the cleaning lady was just after money. But my dad wouldn't listen and insisted on making a scene. He let that cleaning lady insult and mock my mom, which drove her to illness, and she even started having mental health issues. In the end, it was my grandpa who stepped in, sent the cleaning lady away, and made my dad go stay in Africa for a few years. That's when my dad left behind a decent inheritance, and only then did things barely settle down. So, my mom has always hoped I'd find someone from a good family, and she tends to feel a bit hostile toward people from average backgrounds. When I went back home this time, I had a serious talk with her to make her understand that you're not that kind of person. Otherwise, I would have thrown away that cheap shirt of yours ages ago. Fred's words struck a chord with me. She's been sick lately and couldn't make it, so she asked me to apologize to you. Please don't hold it against her. Of course not. I could see that his mom was also a victim of circumstance. She had no control over encountering a jerk. I felt a twinge of sympathy. Fred gently stroked my face and said earnestly, "So, Bridget Judson, can we get back together now?" I nodded eagerly. "Of course we can, Fred. I don't want to break up with you at all. You're my favorite." "Good." Fred smiled contentedly and leaned down to kiss me, and I shyly tilted my head up. But the next moment, a gentle, timid female voice interrupted us. "Senior, I feel a bit carsick. Could I swap seats with you?" I turned my head. It was the water girl standing next to our seats. What was her name again? Oh, Martha Dearser. She was dressed in a green outfit. Turns out she was one of the new recruits this time as well. Before I could react, Fred spoke first, looking somewhat displeased at being interrupted while trying to kiss me. He said with a flat expression, "Carsick." The water girl clutched her chest, nodding pitifully. "Yes, Senior, I feel dizzy and nauseous. It's so uncomfortable. So I wanted to see if I could switch seats with you. Would that be okay?" I scoffed inwardly. Sure, I'll agree to that. This was the first time I'd heard of someone feeling carsick and choosing to sit in the back instead of moving forward. Her insincerity was practically slapping me in the face. Fred lifted his eyelids to glance at her. I've agreed for her. You can sit there. I was momentarily stunned, looking at Fred in disbelief. He was just begging to get back together and wanting to kiss me, but now he was willing to let a green tea girl take my spot. The water girl was also taken aback by how readily Fred had agreed, and her face lit up with joy. She bit her lip, bashfully saying, "Thank you, Senior." Fred nodded, then stood up. Then he abruptly pulled the angry me up. I was even more bewildered. In my dazed state, I heard Fred casually say, "Then you can sit here alone, okay?" When Fred led me to a new seat, I was still trying to wrap my head around what had just happened. I glanced back at the water girl, who was frozen in place with a distorted expression. She stood there, not knowing whether to sit or stand. Classmates around us who had listened to the whole thing shot her looks of amusement and glee. Wow! Fred's ability to spot a green tea girl had clearly improved. He could now slap her down without even swearing. I felt a sense of satisfaction. How pitiful, pitiful. Do you really want me to sit with someone else? Fred shot me a cool glance. I laughed and quickly denied it. That won't happen. I'm just curious. Are you too close? Just a nodding acquaintance. I mentioned to you a few days ago that she's Dun's god sister. I don't really pay attention to her beyond that. Does Dun like her? Looks like it. That's why he had her help us with the water last time. And you ran into her? I'll be honest, I haven't even added her on Weshit. Fred's words secretly relieved me. Perhaps my nervousness was too obvious. Fred raised an eyebrow as if realizing something. He reached up to touch my chin, forcing me to look at him. Bridget Judson, was your reason for wanting to break up with me just because of my mom? Or were there other reasons? I blinked, unsure how to explain. At that moment, if I were to say, "I suspect you just want to sleep with me," he might punch me. Seeing that I wasn't responding, Fred's expression turned colder. He moved his hand from my chin to pinch my face, his tone steady. "Indeed, there are other reasons. Regardless, if something's bothering you, tell me. I'll handle it as long as you don't break up with me." When he spoke, the affection in his eyes was genuine, palpable. It was straightforward and clear. I paused for a moment. Then I realized something unbelievable. It seemed that Fred actually liked me for real, not just for fun. I couldn't help but blurt out, "Then why do you always want to book a room with me? I see other guys in relationships, and they're all so innocent." Fred raised an eyebrow. "What others do is none of my business because it's different for us. If you like innocent relationships, I can do that too. It's just that I like you, which naturally makes me want you. Besides, we'll eventually get married and have our little world together, so why not start now?" Wait. He suddenly narrowed his eyes dangerously mid-sentence. "Bridget Judson, you don't think I'm just some jerk who wants to sleep with you, and doesn't actually like you, do you?" My scalp tingled. Oh boy, sometimes having a smart boyfriend isn't such a good thing, because he could quickly piece together the cause and effect from your few words. Then he'd come at you with terrifying lectures. His gaze was so cold it felt like nothing could survive within a 3-kilometer radius. I stammered, not knowing how to explain, so I hurriedly pouted and begged for forgiveness. I'm wrong, I misunderstood." Fred was mindful of the number of people on the bus and didn't scold me any further. He just said seriously, "Regardless of the reason, it's my fault for making you anxious. From now on, I'll give you plenty of security." My heart swelled with happiness. All the gloom and fear vanished, replaced by bubbling joy. It felt like a series of fireworks, bursting one after another. Probably worried I wouldn't feel secure, Fred stuck to me once we reached the campsite. The familiar yet unfamiliar people all understood that we had reconciled. They teased us playfully. Only Martha Dearser shot me a few disdainful glances. Her resentful, calculating eyes seemed to scream that she hoped everyone knew her intentions. I didn't want to bother with her and instead pondered a pressing question. How should I sleep tonight? Now that we were back together and had opened up to each other, if I didn't share a tent with him tonight, he would surely worry about me. But if I slept with him, I feared I'd wake up with back pain in the morning. Rationality and impulse clashed in my mind for a while, but I ultimately decided to sleep in the same tent as him. So what? I'm just a girl with natural desires. Your boyfriend is a top-notch stud with 8-pack abs and a gorgeous figure. He says he likes you and doesn't want to break up with you. How could you resist that? I couldn't resist. So this was just a normal human reaction. Plus, he had already said he wanted to marry me in the future, so naturally, I wouldn't reject him. I was just a top-tier lover of Ed Fred. After successfully brainwashing myself, I grabbed the blanket from the club and turned to help Ed Fred set up the tent. To my surprise, I found Martha Dearser had somehow moved next to him again. She was cutely begging for his help. I paused my steps, choosing not to go over and watch the drama. Senior, I don't know how to set up a tent. Could you help me? Ed Fred didn't even glance at her, his tone slightly mocking. Can you read? Yes, if you can read, why can't you understand the instructions? Martha Dearser's smile faltered for a moment, then she pitifully replied, Senior, I understand the steps, but I'm too weak to hold the tent up. I guess I'm too fat. Otherwise, I could at least sleep inside it. Now Ed Fred responded, looking up at the water girl. His gaze swept over her from head to toe. Then he blurted out something shocking. Definitely need to lose weight. Work hard to lose 5 pounds with the tent. Ed Fred now seemed to have broken some kind of mean-spirited seal, lashing out without hesitation and leaving no room for her pride. Martha Dearser's face twisted at his words. Senior, you really have a way with words. Want to hear something even more interesting? I do. Oh, go away, Ed Fred replied coolly. Previously, you were my roommate's friend, so I spared you, but I won't anymore. Martha Dearser laughed awkwardly and tried to say a few more things, but she quickly made an excuse to leave. Just before she left, she shot me a venomous glance. I nonchalantly returned the gesture with a middle finger. Why would I pamper you? Watching her walk into the small grove, I snorted and quietly followed behind. The water delivery girl may not be significant, but she always buzzes around Ed Fred like a fly. Buzz, buzz, buzz. I really have to deal with her. If she provokes me, she'll regret it. By the time I returned from my stroll, Ed Fred had already set up the tent. I casually tossed my bag into the tent. He glanced at me, his Adam's apple moving, his gaze dark and intense. I suddenly think the tent should be set up somewhere less crowded. My face flushed. Damn, how shameless. I like it. A little later, the entire club gathered for dinner. Ed Fred hardly ate, but kept staring at me with burning eyes. My intuition told me he wanted to kiss me right then and there, but with so many people around, he could only play with my hand, a mix of intimacy and impatience. So it's no wonder I felt like he just wanted to have fun with me. Who wouldn't think that? After dinner, the club president insisted on gathering everyone together to play games, claiming it would boost team spirit. The game was truth or dare, and the losers had to drink. I didn't want to join, but then I suddenly remembered something and eagerly followed along. Of course, Ed Fred joined me. As soon as he sat down, Martha Dearser looked at him eagerly, but Ed Fred just held me close and whispered to me. The game soon began. Since there were a lot of people, we played pass the parcel to determine the unfortunate victim. To my surprise, the first unfortunate soul was Ed Fred. Truth, please, Martha Dearser chimed in. Senior, name 3 of your girlfriend's flaws. Real flaws. Mind you, the malice in her eyes was glaring. Ed Fred didn't think much and replied directly. She bites me, kicks me while sleeping, and steals my blanket. That's enough. 3. He said this with a gentle and lazy expression. It didn't feel like he was complaining about his girlfriend's flaws. Rather, it felt like he was proudly telling everyone, we're in a good relationship, we sleep together, and everything's great. Even I, with my thick skin, felt a bit shy. Then I snuggled up to Ed Fred, and he couldn't resist leaning in to kiss me in front of everyone. This immediately drew teasing remarks from our classmates. Only Martha Dearser wore a forced smile. She was probably still trying to find a way to stir up trouble, but in the next round, it was her turn to be the unfortunate one. She smiled sweetly and said, I choose truth, too. I chuckled and asked directly, Junior, what were you and that guy over there doing in the woods just now? As soon as I said this, Several people's expressions changed. Martha Dearser stiffly replied, "We didn't do anything. I was just helping Jackson Sr. collect some firewood for our bonfire tonight." "Is that so? Because I saw you two kissing." "Don't say nonsense, Senior." Martha Dearser denied it repeatedly, and immediately turned to the president, whose expression was darkening. "President, I assure you, I really was just collecting firewood with Jackson Sr. Bridget Judson is just spreading rumors because I know Ed Fred Sr." Jackson quickly denied it, too. "Babe, you have to believe me. Nothing's going on between me and the junior." The president wasn't fooled. Though she liked to act formal, she was still a top student. She asked me directly, "Bridget Judson, do you have evidence?" "Actually, I happened to be taking selfies at that moment and caught it on camera. I posted it in the club group. You can all check it out." Now, the game was over. A dramatic showdown began. As Ed Fred pulled me up to head back to the tent to sleep, I could already hear shouts, angry accusations, and pleas for mercy behind us. Martha Dearser probably got her hair pulled for a serious talking to by then. Of course, I noticed from the moment we got in the car that Martha Dearser would flirt with one guy and then turn to another, acting all cute. The girls knew what was up, while the guys were enchanted by her pretty face. They thought they were quite charming. In short, it was bad enough that she flirted with anyone, but to do it in front of me and Ed Fred was crossing the line. We weren't going to let her get away with it. When I crawled out of the tent the next day, sore and aching, someone told me that the president had kicked Martha Dearser and her boyfriend out overnight. As for the club credits, they could forget about adding any this semester. I overheard and didn't care much. Dunn found out about it that day and was stunned. He immediately deleted Martha Dearser from his contacts. Then he dragged me and Ed Fred out for drinks to drown our sorrows. I really misjudged her. I thought she was an innocent little flower, but she's a black-hearted white lotus. She almost caused you two to break up. Today's meal is on me. Consider it my apology." Dunn was filled with guilt, chugging his drink and lamenting life. You guys don't understand how beautiful love at first sight can be." "Oh wait, Ed Fred should understand." I asked curiously. "How does he understand?" Dunn explained. "Because he fell in love with you at first sight." I blinked in confusion. Dunn laughed. "Wait, Ed Fred, you never told Bridget Judson about this." At that, he slammed the table, his mood instantly brightening. "Back in our freshman year, Bridget Judson, when you stood on stage as the student representative, how many fans did you gain, including our Ed Fred? So he discreetly tried to create encounters with you, like a cunning old fox. Unexpectedly, you ended up chasing him first, and he was so happy that night he washed all our socks in the dorm. I must say, I feel like those socks still carry the scent of your romance." Ed Fred snorted. "That's your own foot odor. Shut up and drink." HMPH. Dunn sulked, returning to his drink while reminiscing about the past White Lotus. I looked at Ed Fred in disbelief. I thought I was the one who pursued Ed Fred first, and then we developed feelings over time. But it turned out he truly fell in love with me at first sight and had been scheming all along. "Why didn't you tell me? I told you I liked you, but you didn't believe me, and thought I was a jerk. Do you believe it now?" "Woo-woo, I believe it." I was so touched that I threw myself into his arms. Ed Fred kissed my cheek. "You're so silly. Woo-woo, so you really like me this much?" "Actually, you could interpret it as me loving you." In the noisy barbecue stall, his tone was light yet firm. Dunn, sitting next to us, wasn't happy and tapped on the table. "Hey, there's still someone alive here. You two should tone it down." "Hey, why are you two in such a hurry to leave after a couple of words?" "Wait, Ed Fred, does this mean I don't have to leave the door open for you tonight?" The end.